Fun fact, in ancient Egypt, people believed that when you died, your soul was split into two parts, the Ka and the Ba. The Ka was your life force, while the Ba was more like your personality, and both were essential to navigating the afterlife. But in order to reach the afterlife, you had to pass one final test. Picture this, you're standing in a hugely elaborate hall. In front of you, you see a table upon which sits a scale. Your heart is placed on the scale and weighed against the feather of truth by the jackal-headed god Anubis. If your heart was lighter than the feather, you've lived a righteous life and were granted passage to the Field of Reeds, an eternal paradise. But if your heart was heavier than the feather, unfortunately, this meant the crocodile lion goddess Amet would devour your heart and your soul would cease to exist for eternity. The Egyptians weren't alone in thinking that death was only the beginning of a much bigger journey. Cultures around the world have been imagining what comes after for millennia. From the Viking halls of Valhalla to the Buddhist realms of Narak, today we're gonna dive into the weird, wonderful, and sometimes terrifying afterlives from around the globe. For most Westerners, the word heaven conjures up images of pearly gates, fluffy clouds, and angels with golden harps. In Christianity, heaven is the ultimate reward for a life of faith and virtue. It's depicted as a paradise where souls live in eternal peace and communion with God. Fun fact, Christianity isn't the only Abrahamic religion with a heavenly concept. In Islam, there's Jannah, often described as a garden of pleasure filled with flowing rivers, trees, and everything the heart desires, like an eternal, perfect vacation. And while in the Abrahamic religions, heaven is depicted as a place, the concept of an eternal reward can be far more abstract in other religions. In Hinduism, the goal is not to get to heaven, but to attain moksha. Moksha is the liberation from the cycle of reincarnation. Souls are believed to go through a continuous process of birth, death, and rebirth until they achieve spiritual enlightenment. Only then can they merge with Brahman, the supreme cosmic force, almost like the soul of the universe. It's not a destination like heaven, but a state of eternal bliss and unity with the universe. Fun fact, in Hindu mythology, there's a famous story about an elephant named Gajendra who attained moksha after calling for the help of the god Vishnu while being attacked by a crocodile. All dogs might go to heaven, but very few elephants attain moksha. Speaking of glorious ends, we can't forget about the Vikings. Fun fact, in Norse mythology, most of the dead go to an underworld that's neither a punishment or a reward. Only warriors who die valiantly in battle are taken by the Valkyries to Valhalla, the majestic hall of the slain. There they join Odin and feast endlessly, preparing for the apocalyptic final battle of Ragnarok. Valhalla has some very interesting perks though, like a goat whose udders provide an endless supply of beer. Now let's take a trip to the darker side of the afterlife, hell. Cultures around the world have imagined all kinds of places where the wicked are punished for their misdeeds. In Christianity, hell is a place of eternal torment, ruled over by Satan, where souls who have been rejected by God or lived sinful lives are punished. It's depicted as a fiery place of unending suffering. Fun fact, the idea of hell became even more infamous thanks to Dante Alighieri's Divine Comedy, where he describes the Inferno as a place with 9 concentric circles, each one designed to punish a different kind of sinner. And while hells from other religions will definitely differ, there are many things they have in common. Buddhism has its own take on hell, and it's just as intense. Buddhist hells are divided into realms or narak, where souls experience suffering that mirrors the bad karma they've accumulated in life. There are different levels of narak, ranging from freezing hells to boiling hells, and while they're still terrifying, they're not eternal. The soul only stays there until its negative karma is burned off. Fun fact, in many countries with large Buddhist populations, you can find hell parks, where you can walk through scenes depicting the tortures of Narak. These parks are meant to serve as a warning to the living to lead moral lives and draw crowds of nearly 80,000 people a year. Meanwhile, in Mayan mythology, we find Xibalba, an underworld ruled by dark and sinister gods. The Mayans believed Xibalba was a place filled with traps, trials, and terrifying monsters. Getting through it required cunning, skill, and strength, but it was possible. There's actually a Mesoamerican text called the Popol Vuh, which tells the tale of a set of heroic twins who passed all the trials and eventually dethroned the evil gods who ruled by beating them in a ballgame. Fun fact, some modern Mayan communities believe the entrance to Xibalba can be found at a cave in Guatemala, while other Mayan groups maintain that it's in the Milky Way. believing souls traverse the stars to reach the underworld. But not all afterlife destinations are so clear-cut. There are plenty of beliefs about afterlives that aren't exactly heaven or hell, more of an in-between. In Judaism, we find Sheol, a shadowy, indistinct realm where all the dead go, good or bad. Souls go there to wait for final judgment, neither rewarded nor punished, just waiting. According to Aztec mythology, most people who die must make a treacherous journey to Mictlan, the land of the dead. The journey wasn't a punishment, it was a test, a long and difficult voyage through 9 levels, each one symbolizing a different trial the soul must endure before it can rest. Fun fact, the 9 levels of Mictlan may share some similarities with Dante's 9 circles of the Inferno that we talked about earlier. In modern Mexican culture, these ancient Aztec beliefs are remembered through Dia de los Muertos. The holiday echoes the Aztec view of death as a natural part of life, with the living and the dead existing in harmony. In Japanese Shintoism, the land of the dead is called Yomi. It's described as a dark and polluted place, where souls linger after death. And once a soul enters Yomi, it can never leave. Despite that description, Yomi isn't a bad place. It's more of a neutral location, and the souls of the dead are thought to linger there, becoming kami, and helping their families well into the future. Throughout history, cultures have developed all sorts of explanations for what comes after this life. And what's most interesting is that these stories of the afterlife aren't just about death, they're about life. They show us what each culture values: bravery, righteousness, enlightenment, or simply living in harmony with the universe. And whatever comes after, what matters most is what we do while we're still here. So whether you're hoping for a seat in Valhalla, a trip to Jannah, or just a quiet rest in Sheol, make the most of the time you've got.